The knife was already moving before I decided to stop it. I saw the wrist turn first, that small twist that separates a waiter carrying a tray from a man carrying a blade. My body reacted before my mind caught up, the way it always had, ever since the years I tried hard to forget. I stepped sideways, caught his arm, and pressed it back against his own chest so fast that the crowd around us barely noticed anything had happened at all. The hall kept laughing, the music kept playing. Only the man in my grip understood what had almost happened, and only I understood what it meant that he had chosen tonight, in this palace, to try it. His eyes found mine, and something shifted in them. Not fear of being caught. Fear of who had caught him. "You," he whispered, so only I could hear. "You are supposed to be gone." I did not answer. I never answered questions like that. I simply guided him toward the side door, calm on the outside, storm on the inside, and handed him to the palace guards waiting there. They took him without asking why a quiet human standing near the wall had reacted faster than trained soldiers twice his size. I returned to my post by the tall glass windows, back straight, eyes forward, as if nothing unusual had occurred. But something had. Word like that does not stay buried. By morning, it would be everywhere that mattered. My name is Ethan Bell. Officially, I am a personal guard hired to protect Queen Ysandra of the Doran Court, ruler of a world far from the one I was born on. Unofficially, I used to be someone else entirely, someone with a different name whispered in fear across places I would rather not remember. I thought that life was finished. I thought I had buried it deep enough that no one would ever dig it up again. I was wrong. Queen Ysandra was not like the rulers people imagine when they think of alien royalty. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, every word carried weight, because she never wasted them. She had hired me through a quiet agency that matched guards to important people across different systems, and she liked that I did not ask questions, did not gossip, and did not flinch at the strange customs of her court. She trusted me because I gave her no reason not to. Until last night, when a stranger looked at me and remembered a name I had spent years trying to erase. The next morning, I was summoned to her private chamber earlier than usual. She stood by a tall window, watching the twin suns rise over silver towers, her long fingers folded behind her back. She did not turn around when I entered. "The man from last night," she said. "He spoke a name before the guards took him away." I said nothing. Silence had always been safer than lies. "He called you ghost," she continued. "Not once, as an insult, but with something closer to dread. My advisors tell me this word carries meaning among certain circles that deal in contracts and disappearances. Circles I did not know existed until this morning." I kept my hands steady at my sides. "Your Grace, whatever he said, it does not change my duty to protect you." She finally turned. Her eyes, a pale shade of gold, studied me, the way a scholar studies an old book with missing pages. "I am not asking you to explain your past, Ethan. I am asking whether your past is now walking through my front door, and whether it intends to bring more visitors like him." I thought about lying. I thought about giving her the story I had rehearsed for years, the one about simple training and nothing more. But something about her steady gaze told me lies would not serve either of us well today. "There may be more," I admitted. "If someone recognized me last night, it means my name has resurfaced somewhere it should have stayed buried. People with old grudges do not forget quickly, and some of them collect debts through violence rather than conversation." She did not look afraid. She looked thoughtful, the way someone looks when solving a puzzle rather than facing a disaster. "Then we prepare," she said simply. "You will tell me nothing you are not ready to share, but you will not hide the danger from me either. Agreed?" "Agreed," I said, and meant it. That evening, the first message arrived. It came through an encrypted channel meant only for palace security, a channel that should have been impossible to breach from outside. The message contained no threats, no demands, only a single phrase repeated 3 times. "We remember you." I stood in the security room long after the others had left, staring at those words until the letters blurred together. Somewhere out there, people who once feared my name were gathering courage, resources, and old grudges, all pointed at a palace that had nothing to do with the life I used to live. I could have resigned. I could have vanished again, the way I had vanished once before, leaving behind a queen who trusted me, and a court that had grown used to my quiet presence. Part of me considered it, if only for a moment, because leaving would have kept the danger far from her. But another part of me, the part that had grown tired of running, refused to let history repeat itself. I had left people behind once before, running from consequences instead of facing them, and the guilt of that choice had followed me longer than any bounty ever could. I would not make that mistake twice. The following days passed in careful preparation. I worked with the palace security chief, a sharp woman named Priya Kapoor, who asked few questions but understood urgency the moment she saw it. Together we reviewed entry points, guard rotations, and the identities of every recent visitor to the court. We found nothing obvious, no clear trail leading back to whoever had sent that message, which worried me more than any direct threat could have. Whoever was coming for me understood patience. They understood that fear works best when it lingers, when it stretches nerves thin before ever striking. 3 nights later, the second attempt came, and this time it was not subtle at all. I was walking the east corridor near midnight when the lights flickered once, then died completely, plunging the hallway into darkness. My training took over instantly. I dropped low, moved against the wall, and listened for footsteps that did not belong. There were 3 of them, moving with practiced coordination, clearly professionals rather than desperate opportunists. I heard the soft click of a weapon being readied somewhere to my left, and I moved before the sound finished, closing the distance and disarming the closest attacker before he even registered my approach. The corridor became a blur of controlled movement. I was not trying to hurt anyone unnecessarily. I only needed them stopped, restrained, and unable to reach the chamber where Queen Yasandra slept 2 floors above. Every motion I made was measured, precise, meant to end the confrontation as quickly and safely as possible. Within minutes, backup guards arrived with emergency lighting, and the 3 intruders were secured, their weapons collected, their faces unfamiliar to me but clearly trained for this kind of work. As the lights returned fully, one of them looked at me and said the same word the first assassin had used. Ghost. I said nothing, but inside, a cold understanding settled over me. This was not random anymore. This was a hunt, carefully organized, and I was the prize they were all chasing, regardless of the danger it brought to everyone around me. Queen Yasandra summoned me again the next morning, and this time there was no hesitation in her voice. You will tell me everything now, she said, not because I demand it as your employer, but because I cannot protect my people from a threat I do not understand. I took a breath, and finally let the truth surface, the story I had buried for years. I told her about the division I once served, a secretive group tasked with handling threats too dangerous or too quiet for normal military forces to touch. I told her how effective we were, how feared, and how eventually that fear turned into resentment among the very people who once hired us. I told her about the mission that changed everything. When an order came down that crossed a line I refused to cross, a line involving innocent lives caught between powerful people playing games with no regard for consequences. I refused the order. My refusal saved lives that night, but it also marked me as unreliable, dangerous, someone who could no longer be trusted by those who valued obedience over conscience. I disappeared soon after, erasing every trace of my old identity, building a new life as a quiet guard who asked for nothing more than steady work and silence. For years it worked, until last week, when someone recognized my face in her palace and decided my continued freedom was worth more as a bounty than as a threat. Queen Yasandra listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable until I finished speaking. When I did, she was quiet for a long moment, studying me with new understanding rather than suspicion. You refused an unjust order, she said finally, and you have spent years paying for that choice ever since. She shook her head slowly. That is not the record of a dangerous man, Ethan. That is the record of a man who values conscience over comfort. I see no reason to remove you from my service. If anything, I trust you more now than before. Her words settled something in me that had been unsettled for a long time. I had expected judgment. Instead, I received understanding, and it strengthened my resolve to protect her no matter what came next. We spent the following week reinforcing every layer of security around the palace, working closely with Priya and her team to anticipate the next move from whoever was orchestrating these attempts. I suspected the attacks would grow more organized, more dangerous, as previous attempts failed and frustration grew among those hunting me. I was right. The next attack came not as a single intruder or small group, but as a coordinated effort during a diplomatic gathering, where dozens of important visitors from neighboring systems filled the palace halls. It was the perfect opportunity for chaos, a crowd large enough to hide movement, an event important enough that security could not simply shut everything down without cause. I noticed the first sign during the opening reception, a subtle shift in how certain guests positioned themselves near exits, how their eyes tracked security patterns rather than admiring the decorations around them. I quietly alerted Priya through a discreet earpiece, describing exactly which guests concerned me and why. She trusted my judgment without hesitation, repositioning guards without alarming the crowd, tightening security around the queen without making it obvious to onlookers. Together, we moved like two halves of the same careful machine, anticipating danger before it could fully reveal itself. The moment came during the formal address, when Queen Yasandra stood before the gathered delegates to speak about renewed trade agreements between systems. I watched from my position near the stage, eyes scanning every face, every hand, every subtle movement that did not belong. That is when I saw him, a delegate from a minor trading house, reaching slowly toward something hidden beneath his formal robes. I moved instantly, crossing the distance between us before he could complete the motion, restraining his arm with practiced control before anyone else in the room even understood what was happening. He struggled briefly, but training and determination overcame his resistance quickly. Palace guards arrived within seconds, securing him and escorting him away as the crowd murmured in confusion rather than panic, unaware of how close disaster had come to unfolding before them. Queen Yasandra never paused her speech. She continued speaking with steady confidence, her voice unwavering despite what had just occurred mere steps away from her podium. Only after the event concluded did she seek me out, her expression a mixture of gratitude and quiet resolve. "They are getting bolder," she observed, "which means they are getting more desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, Ethan. We simply need to be ready when those mistakes happen." She was right, and 3 days later, the mistake finally came. An informant within the palace staff, someone Priya had suspected for weeks but lacked proof against, attempted to disable the security systems during a routine maintenance window. Priya caught the attempt almost immediately, her suspicions finally confirmed, and within hours we had a name, a connection, and a trail leading directly back to the source of every attack. The organization hunting me was smaller than I expected. A group of former associates who had once worked alongside the division I left behind, now operating independently, selling their skills to anyone willing to pay for old grudges to be settled. They had learned of my location through a chance encounter, the same assassin from the very first night, who had recognized me purely by accident during what was meant to be an unrelated assignment. Once they understood who I had become, protecting a queen with genuine influence across multiple systems, the temptation grew too strong to ignore. Removing me would settle old scores while also creating chaos within an important political relationship. A victory on two fronts for people who valued disruption as much as revenge. With the informant identified and cooperating under careful negotiation, we finally had enough information to locate the group's temporary base, hidden within a merchant vessel docked at the edge of the system. Queen Yasandra authorized a coordinated response with her security forces, working alongside local authorities to end the threat permanently, rather than allowing it to linger indefinitely. I insisted on being part of that final operation, not out of any desire for confrontation, but because I understood these people better than anyone else could. I knew their training, their patterns, their likely response when cornered, knowledge that could mean the difference between a clean resolution and unnecessary danger for everyone involved. The operation unfolded with careful precision. Palace security surrounded the vessel while I approached alongside Priya, using knowledge of old tactics to anticipate exactly how the group inside would react to being discovered. When the moment came, negotiation proved more effective than confrontation, the group finally understanding that continuing their pursuit would only bring greater consequences than any bounty could ever be worth. They surrendered without further incident, their leader recognizing me one final time as guards led them away. "You were always the reasonable one," he said quietly. "Maybe that is why you left when the rest of us couldn't." I did not respond, but his words stayed with me long after the operation concluded, a strange sense of closure settling over years of guilt and hiding. The threat that had followed me for so long was finally resolved, not through violence, but through patience, preparation, and trust between people who chose understanding over fear. Queen Yasandra summoned me one final time that evening, standing once again by her favorite window overlooking the twin suns as they set behind silver towers. "You could have run again," she said without turning around. "Many would have, given everything you carried." I considered it, I admitted honestly. But running never actually solved anything before. It only delayed the moment when everything finally caught up. She turned to face me, her expression calm and certain. "Then let this be the moment it stops catching up, Ethan. Whatever name they once knew you by, whatever fear that name once carried, it ends here, tonight, in this palace." I nodded, feeling something settle within me that had been unsettled for years, a quiet peace replacing the constant vigilance I had carried since the day I first disappeared. The assassins had recognized me first, drawn by fear and old grudges from a life I thought I had left behind forever. But it was the Queen who truly saw me, understood me, and chose to trust me regardless of everything that past might have meant. In the end, that trust proved stronger than any bounty. any grudge or any fear that had followed me across the stars. I remained her guard long after that night, standing quietly by doors and windows, watching over a court that had become more of a home than any place I had known before. The past no longer chased me through shadows and whispered names. It had finally been faced, resolved, and laid to rest, leaving only quiet purpose in its place. And that, more than any victory in battle, felt like the truest kind of peace I had ever known.